You had such an unusual journey, be it being archaeologist as well as food historian. How did these worlds come together?
My mother was an archaeologist. She did her PhD in archaeology from the Deccan College. My father was a shippie. He was a radio officer with the Merchant Navy. And my mother had spent quite a bit of time with him out at sea. My house was full of archaeology books on one side and food books on the other side. So most farmers don't want their sons to be farmers. Try being there when you got to bloody push a plow with 45 degrees heat in the plains of northern India. That is no life that you want to lead. So we became farmers not because we wanted to. We became farmers because we had to.
Hello, namaskar, adab, sat sri akal, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Beenest. I'm your host Zubair Sofi with another interesting podcast in which we have a famous personality with us who is an archaeologist, a chef, but prefers to be called a pachari and a food historian. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Mr. Kurush Dalal, who will be talking about the history of food, evolution of food, and current trends of food. You had such an unusual journey, be it being archaeologist and you prefer to be called Batiara, as well as food historian. How did these worlds come together? I mean, how do you introduce yourself?
Basically, Zubair, what happened was my mother was an archaeologist. She did her PhD in archaeology from the Deccan College. She excavated on the Indo-Pakistan border. She was responsible for finding one of the earliest inhabited settlements belonging to what at that time was called the Pre-Harappan. And when she finished her PhD research and was awarded her doctorate, she was told in no uncertain terms that there was no place for her for a job in archaeology. She came down to Bombay. She tried teaching at colleges, but it was all history, not archaeology. It was not her thing. And purely by chance, she became a caterer because a good family friend moved away from where we lived, but kept coming back every day for work and was more or less eating out of our kitchen when he decided he wanted us to send him dabba and insisted on paying for it. 15 days later, he came back with two of his friends and said, "Look, they're eating my dabba every day. Please give them dabba also." And something as simple as this started off an entire journey into catering. My father was a shippie. He was a radio officer with the Merchant Navy. And my mother had spent quite a bit of time with him out at sea. She saw the world at a time when most Indians didn't get a chance to see the world. I'm talking about the late 60s and the 70s. And this completely changed her perspective of things. She came from a family of very good cooks.
Okay.
And she loved cooking. And she loved experimenting with things. And as somebody who'd done research, my house was full of archaeology books on one side and food books on the other side.
Interesting.
So people would say, we're having a party. Katie, will you do this for us? Will you do that for us? So my mom, along with sending tiffins, started catering to family functions, home functions, what today is called the home chef. So she was a home chef 30 years before the term home chef came into being. And I grew up with the food business as being part of my life. It was mainly out of home. Then we moved to various clubs and things like that, which had large kitchens. And to me, it was just natural growing up surrounded by people, cooking for 1,000 people a day and things like that. At the same time, when I was a really small child, I grew up on all the wrong stories, as I tell people. When everybody was getting happy bedtime stories, my mother was telling me stories about Alexander the Great, slashing and burning his way across Asia Minor and Persia. She was telling me about Ashoka Maurya crowning himself, hands covered in the blood of his brothers. I mean, as I say this very often, if she was around today, I'd really want to ask her, what was wrong with her? But so she inculcated a great love for history and archaeology in me very early on. And at the same time, I was eating food at home, which I didn't realize till quite a bit later wasn't the kind of food that everybody ate. So, I was a Parsi, I was eating Parsi food, I thought. But we were eating a lot of food which is, today called continental and doesn't exist on the continent. So this is the club food of the Raj and all those salads and bakes and things like that. And I took them completely for granted. My father was also a very good cook, and when he was down from sea, he would make all kinds of fascinating things like tomato and prawn omelets for breakfast. He would grill steak at home. And I took all of that, in my stride as just being part of a very normal family growing up. It was only as I looked at other people's houses that I realized that they had different ways of looking at food, and their food was basically the food of their families and their communities. Nothing wrong with that, but that they all wanted to come to my house to eat.
But I think it would be because that your kitchen was more like an experimental
completely
lab.
An experimental kitchen.
Absolutely.
So when I was about, I think, when I was about 12 or 13, my mother, I was in boarding school, and my mother, when I was on holidays, would send me every day in the morning to do the daily marketing, as it was called. I mean, not marketing in the sense of selling things today, but marketing in the sense of purchase. So I'd go with people who go into the market, see how chicken was bought, mutton was bought. And she genuinely believed that if you ate meat, you should not have a problem watching meat being chopped up in front of you. That, if you're picky about chickens being slaughtered and lambs being slaughtered and all of that, then perhaps you should not eat that. Now, that was her way of looking at it, and I kind of agree with her in many ways that if you're going to be very icky about it and act like it didn't happen, but still love eating a juicy drumstick, then a little bit of hypocrisy
comes in, absolutely. But how do you introduce yourself now? Is it archaeologist?
So, archaeologist, culinary anthropologist,
wonderful,
and museum consultant.
Which is really like all like different perspectives coming together.
Yeah.
So was there any defining moment when food shifted from being interest to passion?
So number one was I realized sometime in the late 90s that while I was finishing my PhD, there was no job for me in archaeology. I was very categorically told, Dari, you come from a family with a business. Tujhe naukri ki kya zarurat hai? And I was like, that is not why you
work. Say no to me,
Yeah, that is not why you say no to me. You say no to me because I don't have the credentials. They said, this is your credential, which debars you.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. So I realized that if I had to have a family and I have to have a life, I had to get back to the business. And my mother was just shutting the business down at that time because she was not keeping very good health. So I said, no, wait, I'll take over. I'd always been part of it. I'd always been, in and out of it. I said, I'll take over. And I took over the business in 98. And it made me look at food very differently after that. So till then, being peripheral or even being involved is one thing. When the buck stops with you and you've got to make wages every month, that's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
So food
that's when you get a reality check.
Yeah. Oh, and how? So that was a hard one. But it was a good one. It was a challenge. And then many years later, somewhere around 2008, 2009, about 10 years later or so, a good friend of mine, mine and my wife's, said, Kurush, you talk so much about the history and archaeology of food items because you know about them. And this was the time of early blogging, and Facebook was just becoming something interesting.
It was just picking up.
Yeah. And we had a very interesting community of people who talked food, very seriously talked food, discussed things. Not these massive groups today where, you have 800 people and 2,000 people and 20,000 people and comments are lost and things like that. So we had very good interactions, and the group would meet actually, because a lot of people are Bombay people, we'd meet in Bombay, and people from out of Bombay, when they would be in Bombay, would be an excuse to meet again. So all of this was a place where I would talk to people, and people seem to be very happy about my knowledge of food thanks to the archaeology history background. And I never really put them together till a friend of mine said, why don't you do a lecture on the archaeology of food? And I said, nahi yaar, ये मुझसे ना हो पाए. And so she and my wife conspired. My wife had been telling me for ages to do this, and I thought, she's my wife, she's biased. And they said, let's do food through the ages. And we did a beautiful lunch menu where we looked at food as, a dish that would have existed during the Harappan period, something that Ashoka Maurya would have eaten, something that would have existed just before the arrival of the Portuguese.
Absolutely.
A typically, truly Mughlai dish, not what we call Mughlai in the restaurants, which is the onion, tomato, birista. Okay? So all of this was happening, and we got a menu into place, and she called me up and said, okay, we're sold out fully.
Wow.
Like, wow. 1 week to go, and we've announced that in the beginning there will be a lecture by you on the archaeology of food.
Wow.
And I said, this is what I didn't want to do. What is wrong with you?
This is your wife doing?
No, this is my friend.
Okay.
And it was like, what is wrong with you? And my wife said, now it's a done deal.
We're going through.
People have bought tickets. You've got to do it. So I sat down on my computer and I said, look, how difficult can it be?
Absolutely.
Right? I had no clue what I was getting into. There was nothing really worth talking about on the archaeology of food. And the archaeology of food in India virtually did not exist on the internet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Google, who should have given me all the answers, had no answers.
Feeding it.
Yeah. And I was like, this is the end.
I don't know where to find it.
Yeah, I wanted to lie down on the floor and waggle my hands and legs in the air like a dead cockroach or a dying cockroach, and have a full-on meltdown. So that day I had a meltdown. I was like, how am I going to do this?
Absolutely.
And the next morning, got up, made myself some good coffee and said, enough of this shit. Kurush, you've done archaeology for so many years. You've done food for so many years. Sit down with pen and paper, screw the computer, okay, and start putting it down together.
Absolutely.
And I still work the best with pen and paper, And about half an hour later, I realized that it was all there. It wasn't like it didn't exist. Nobody just called it the archaeology of food. It was zooarchaeology, paleobotany, things like this, paleopathology. But nobody looked at it from the food point of view. And so I put together a PPT, and it went off pretty decently for an hour.
Okay.
And everybody was happy. I still have that PPT. It's this, every time I think I'm really good at something, I go and watch that PPT and then I cringe inside because something dies a little bit. I'm like, ew, it was that bad. Okay.
But I think you did a great job without Google as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, after that, it was a bloody bottomless, tunnel. Follow this lead, follow that lead, find out who was writing what. This was the time also that a lot of people were writing and publishing books on food history, understanding cuisines, things like that. Not cookbooks per se, But there were also cookbook writers who were writing about their communities, about where their traditions came from. They were not just recipe books, they were cookbooks. So all of this, and my mother's collection that I went back to, and I realized there was so much to learn from there, and to sit with people like my mom and talk to them, because there was a lot of stuff that they'd forgotten more stuff than I knew. So all of that, and that one lecture changed everything. The final kind of nail in the coffin was, so I decided to put together something called the Studying Food Workshop.
Okay.
And I did this in 2019 from the University of Mumbai where I was working. And a very good student of mine and a good friend made a poster. I put it up on Instagram and on Twitter, and I was going to put it up on Facebook, okay, announcing this. I had so many phone calls. 1 hour later, we were booked. We had reached maximum capacity.
Wow.
So my post on Facebook was actually, hi guys, wanted to announce this, but we are sold out. And I had people calling me up and saying,
what was that?
What was that? I mean, how dare you put up something and say it's sold out already? So I said, I'm sorry, but by the time I got to posting it, so that was a major ego boost. I didn't expect that I'd sell 30 seats for something that to me sounded as obscure as, the Studying Food Workshop.
Absolutely.
And people have always shown a lot of love. I'm very grateful to that,
Now, one thing keeps coming in is archaeology. So how does archaeology influence you to look at the food today?
So, see, a lot of the history of humankind is or rather the story of humankind is prehistory or proto-history as we call it in India. It's before the written word. So how do you understand the food of that time without archaeology? You can't. So archaeology is the only source to understand 2 million years of food before, we come to modern days.
Yeah.
So that is the one big role. The second role is that even when we have history is about kings and who did what to whom and where.
Who killed who?
Who killed whom, on what date, on what battlefield, and who owes how much to whom.
Who conquered what,
Yeah.
and all of that.
So there are land revenue records and things like that which are very helpful. But they don't tell you the history of the common people. They don't tell you their story. And again, it's only archaeology in the historical period and the medieval period which recreates how people lived, where they lived, what implements they used, what they grew, how they cooked it, all of that.
But even that, very interestingly, this idea is crossing my head is majorly when we say that, okay, they were fighting a battle in the field, they were doing this, they were doing that, but what were they going to eat? What was their, go-to food? There's nothing, not really
Precisely.
talked about.
So, biryani as we know it today. So the word biryani comes from the word biryan, and the OG biryani in Persia has no rice in it. It's
Wow.
a meat paste with biryan, with fried onions, that's pounded together and served on a roti. When it came to India, it was the biryan, the fried onions,
Wow.
that were essentially responsible for our biryani, and it became a rice course. What happened to it was this was the food that you cooked early in the morning in large dags. Meat for protein, rice for carbohydrate, fried onions for flavor with a few aromatics, whatever you had available to you. And in this dag, it kept cooking on the back of a bullock cart as the army marched. So you'd taken it off the fire, but the dag was hot enough to keep cooking as you went, through the day. And when you stopped, there was hot food to be served.
Absolutely.
So the basic biryani was a very, very basic meat and rice dish. It was not the elaborate, exquisite, cultured dishes that we have today. And Mughal emperors growing up as young princes were competing with each other. May the best man win was what the rule was.
Yeah.
And they spent an inordinate amount of time on the battlefield. So they ate what the battlefield staff
was
ate.
eating, yeah.
So they ate biryani growing up. So biryani became a part of the Mughal court. But then, when you were trying to make it for court food, you were like, okay, Shehzada might love what he's eating in the field, but let's pimp it up a little bit because this is not going to go down with the courtiers, right? So you put
Absolutely.
kishmish and
Cashews.
badam and pista. Cashews much later because cashews came into the Portuguese.
Oh, wow.
So, that kind of thing. And today we have so many variants of biryani all over the country. I mean, you go to South India and the short grain biryani variations that we have. Everybody will tell you about Lucknowi biryani, but the Nawabs of Lucknow would have killed themselves with a blunt teaspoon before they ate a biryani. Biryani was down market.
Okay.
Biryani is what the staff ate. You ate a pulao.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So every time somebody tells me that story about, the poor Nawab was so poor that he put potatoes in his biryani when he shifted to Calcutta, and that's why the Calcutta biryani has potatoes. I was like, first of all, the Nawab wasn't eating the biryani.
Absolutely.
His staff was eating it.
Yeah.
And potatoes at that time were more expensive than meat was. So it was actually a treat. He was pimping up his biryani for people by putting potatoes in it. Today, potatoes are cheaper than meat. So, perspective, guys, perspective.
Yeah. You need to look at it through different perspectives.
Yeah.
So before we move ahead with this conversation, I really want to, even I have been having this question with me for a very long time. Veg biryani is a scam.
No.
Or it's
Not, because biryani is a method of cooking food where you use a rice base with fried onions and spices, and you cook it in a closed vessel. You can have a half-cooked rice or you can have a raw rice. Usually you have a half-cooked rice, which is the most sensible way to cook it, but you can do a raw rice biryani also with raw meat called kachi gosh ki biryani. So otherwise you half-cook and you bring it together and you let it cook in dum. So biryani then is a process. Biryani is not X ingredient. Rice and fried onions are the two ingredients that are
That's staple.
Constant.
Yeah.
But what rice? That also changes, right? And you can put meat in it, you can put chicken in it. So the original biryani would have been beef or lamb, right?
Yeah.
But today probably the most popular biryani is chicken biryani. So then chicken biryani should be a bigger scam. But no, why not? I mean, if this is what works for you, good for you. So I personally don't like the idea of a paneer biryani, but chalo bhai, this works for you.
Yeah.
And paneer is a good source of protein. Chalo paneer
Let's
biryani
go for
kha lo,
it.
veg biryani kha lo,
Absolutely.
ande ki biryani kha lo. There is a biryani which is made only of kofta.
Okay.
There is a biryani that used to be made in Dhaka called lasun ki biryani, where instead of meat, you would have whole cloves of garlic
Wow.
inside the masala, in between two layers of rice. And these cloves of garlic would be boiled in milk first, okay, to slightly cut down the garlickiness,
Yeah.
but keep the flavor. Bring down the heat, keep the flavor. And it will be cooked with very short grain rice. And Q, the great Qureshi, I remember him telling me that, this is one of the finest biryanis I've ever cooked in my life.
Wow.
So, can you imagine a biryani master saying that a biryani without meat was the finest biryani he'd ever cooked?
That's an interesting fact. But also, I have explored a food in different cities and different locations. So, but I have eaten biryani made out of bone marrow as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I've eaten biryanis cooked in milk. I've eaten an entire, complex pulao, virtually a biryani cooked in coconut milk, where, you have you have raw prawns which are marinated in masalas filled inside capsicums.
Wow.
And then you have the rice, the raw rice, and you pour coconut milk and you put it in dum and forget about it. And the rice cooks in the coconut milk and all the steam from the rice cooks the prawns. So,
Wow, that looks things.
and so we used to make it at one time for some of our, good clients, as we call them, who love to experiment with us, and we do it with colored capsicums.
Yeah.
So you'd have red, yellow, green on the same platter, surrounded
More
by this
colourful.
rice, very colorful. You serve everybody a capsicum with rice on the side, and that capsicum would infuse the prawns, and that coconut milk would be playing this amazing game with the rice on the side. Making it creamier, richer. So there is no limit to what you can do.
Different experimentation
Yeah.
could be done. So, coming back to the conversation, can food really be studied like art history or artifacts?
So, number one, archaeology, like I told you, is a very simple way of looking at food. Whatever food remains we have, the remains of food processing we have, the remains of cooking we have, all of this, even human remains, animal remains, tell us about what was eaten, how it was eaten, nutrition, things like that. So, archaeology and food are very, very easy actually.
Okay.
But it gets more interesting when you actually add anthropology to this. Because when you actually study human beings, and you study human beings in different places, and you look at what they eat and the impact of their food, and the stories of their food, so then it becomes, you start putting some flesh on the bones
Absolutely.
of archaeology. History comes into play. And whilst there is, very little true history of food, and food didn't become a part of modern history till much later, off and on through the ages, through history, people have talked about food. Sometimes it's been hilarious. Herodotus talks about India, which he's never been to, and says there are people who got mouths in their stomachs and they feed themselves directly and stuff like that. But all of this is very, very interesting and where it's going. They talk about ingredients, they talk about what they eat. Travelers. So travelers and travelogues are very important because some of them might be completely shocked and not like what they're seeing or what's being eaten, but they are truly writing down what was happening in those places at that time. So history comes into play over here. The fact that all food that we eat is politics. Every single thing that we eat has political ramifications. We don't realize that we started eating food that we grew ourselves instead of food that we hunted or gathered because of politics. It was the politics of being forced to grow our food. People have this whole notion, the farmer, the beautiful green, loamy earth and the beautiful wind. Try being there when you got to bloody push a plow with 45 degrees heat in the plains of northern India. That is no life that you want to lead. So most farmers don't want their sons to be farmers. And I can understand that.
Absolutely.
So we became farmers not because we wanted to. We became farmers because we had to.
Yeah, there was no choice.
Yeah. And it was when we learned to grow surplus that some of us could not farm. So today you and me sitting here, Zubair, are the product of that surplus production. And what has happened is over time, these people who got away from farming are the people who decide policy. These are the people who rule the farmers now.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that it is the surplus food produced by farmers that is feeding us. See, farmer does not have to produce surplus every year.
Yeah.
For a few years, they could probably manage without surplus. But we cannot manage without farm surplus.
We cannot, it's like quite inseparable.
Yeah. I mean, what would we eat? Where would we go?
Absolutely.
I mean, where will our chawal, where will our gehu, where will our ragi, where will it come from if farmers don't say कि हमारे लिए इतना हमने बनाया अभी आप ले लो बाकी. So when you want to make sure that surplus is coming into the market, and we don't have in India a model like the United States where there are 200,000 acre farms and things like that, which are monocropping. We have complex farming societies. Farm plots are often an acre or less. And we just don't realize what it takes to grow food. This is something that, I've now become a kind of evangelist about. So let me ask you a question. If I give you 1 kilo of rice, processed rice, chawal, anaj, and put it on the table in front of you, and I ask you how much water went into its production, what would your guesstimate be?
I would say maybe 500 liters or 1,000 liters.
So the lowest water consuming rice is 1,500 liters per kilo to 2,500 liters per kilo of rice. Every time you dip a tea bag, that's 80 liters of water it took to grow that 1 gram, 1.5 gram of tea leaves that you're putting in your tea bag. Sugarcane, by the time it becomes ethanol, is 10,000 liters per liter.
Quite a lot ratio.
Yeah, so we don't even realize this. Again, it's rainwater and it's flowing away and all of that. But where we don't have rainwater and we are draining our resources
or water we
are pumping it out.
I mean, we're talking a lot about history, about how we have come here. But let's go back to what are the interesting things that we have learned about ancient Indian diets?
So the first thing that we learn is when you start studying food is that there were no potatoes, no tomatoes, no chilies, no guavas, no pineapples, no papayas, no cabbage, no cauliflower. So what did we eat, right?
Exactly.
So we ate, depending on where we were, we ate a lot of gehu and barley. So wheat and barley. On the coast and in the south, we ate a lot of rice, and in the east again. We ate a large volume of millets, of at least 6 to 9 different kinds of millets that we consumed. And these 6 kinds of millets today grow only in Tamil Nadu. It's the only state that grows all the millets. And these are what are called the little millets, as opposed to the large millets. So the large millets, jowar, bajra, and ragi, are actually much later millets that have come to India. So later again is a time frame, and we're talking about thousands of years sometimes. But this is not the autochthonous food of India that India started off with. Brinjal, interestingly, is one of the OG vegetables that we ate in our country.
Wonderful.
And we've been eating brinjal for a very long time. Similarly, lady fingers. Ladies' fingers we've been eating for a long time. Bhindi, as we call it. And there are many variants of the bhindi that grow in India. In Maharashtra, we have a 9-edged bhindi. It's the wild bhindi that comes in. And it's called Naudhari bhindi. And so various things like that, But a lot of the vegetables that we eat today were introduced to us by the Europeans, by the colonizers. And potatoes, tomatoes, chilies, the Holy Trinity, came to us thanks to what we call the Columbian Exchange, which is Christopher Columbus going to the Americas and bringing all these plants back. So Makkah, I tell people from the Punjab and they get very upset that there was no makkah di roti 250 years ago in the Punjab.
Okay.
With your sarson da saag, you ate jaw di roti.
Jaw di roti.
And jaw is basically barley. So that's what you eat. And it's a very healthy thing to eat. But when the British introduced corn in a big way, what the farmers in India, especially in Rajasthan and Punjab, realized was that per acre you got a much higher yield of corn than you got of barley. And for a farmer, that is the priority.
True.
See, the priority is not कि भाई, oh, how healthy is my food or what micronutrients am I getting.
Yeah.
No, it's about what is the bulk volume. So they switched to makkah, and barley suffered because of that. So if you read the Rig Veda, for example, some of the oldest dishes in India that we get from there are made with barley flour.
Mm-hmm.
And those dishes have almost completely disappeared. I mean, where do people make a roti out of barley in their houses any longer? So much of our food has changed, and we've made it our own. I mean, can you imagine Bombay without a vada pav?
Now, no.
Yeah, and the vada pav is more Portuguese than anything else, because that pav, for the first time we started making that kind of leaven bread thanks to the Portuguese. The word pav is the Portuguese word for bread.
Okay.
And then you have this potato patty inside it, which is fried in groundnut oil, which the Portuguese brought from the New World. Along with which you have a chili and groundnut chutney, which the Portuguese brought both of.
Mm-hmm.
So what's left? The besan and the lasun. So the besan basically came from West Asia during the Bronze Age. The garlic came around the same time from Central Asia. So what's Indian? What's left in it? Haldi, kothmir, kadi patta, that's it. So when you look at it that way, our food is a continuously evolving journey.
As we talk about the evolving journey and talking about how food has changed over the course of time, is there a dish today that nearly resembles with something being eaten centuries ago?
A lot of food. So, very often when you look at the Shraddh food of a community, the Shraddh food of a community is the OG traditional food. They don't mess with it. So, and sadly, this is changing in the last 3 or 4 years, and soon will also disappear. But if you go to South India and you look at the Shraddh food of the Iyyars or the Iyangars, there will be no chilies, no potatoes, no tomatoes. And that's simply because those recipes, which have been handed down for hundreds and hundreds of years, these things just didn't grow in India. So they're bereft. Again, if you go traditionally to a place like Puri, to the Jagannath temple, and you have the bhog over there, the vegetables that you can use to make the bhog are carved on the temple. And you can only use those. Again, so then since this temple precedes the arrival of the Columbian exchange, again these things aren't there. Cauliflower and cabbage have only come in the 19th century into India. Not even earlier than that.
Wow, that's surprising.
So every time we go to the hills, and people will tell you that, oh, I went to Jammu and I had this amazing plate of rajma chawal with ghee.
Yeah.
So the chawal is very Indian, the ghee is very Indian, the rajma is not.
Okay.
So rajma came to India because of the French. So the French went to Mexico and propped up this poor younger brother of an Austrian king as the emperor of Mexico. They lost. He faced a firing squad and died. But the French army that came back with beans, which were a mainstay of food in Mexico and a dried food that could be carried by the army.
Wow.
So these beans came back to Europe and to India in a big way. And this is less than 150 years ago. And, the cassoulet, the famous white bean soup of Paris, that is basically thanks to that war. So the troops from India, the Pondicherry troops that came back, brought these beans with them. And these beans grew in Mexico at high altitude and cold weather conditions. So they grew best in the Himalayas. And we still haven't mapped how they reached there. But within a decade, they were growing in the Himalayas, and the Himalayas have made them their own. So then is Rajma Indian or not? Even the name is not the original name from Mexico. Rajma is an Indian name.
So when we talk about how different dishes or vegetables have reached to India through different wars, and so India has a rich food history. And are there any commonly believed myths which are actually wrong that we need to talk about?
So again, like I told you, this whole thing about aloo, the thing about mirchi. Indians firmly believe that mirchi has always been part of India. हम तो हमेशा हमारे पूर्वज मिर्ची खाते आए. अरे हमारी नानियों ने कहा हमें. My grandmother told me, sir. So I'm sorry, but your grandmother is not speaking the gospel truth. But her grandmother taught to her. Bhai sahab, but that is still not even 200 years.
The generational knowledge they have been carrying.
So, the fun thing is then to try and understand what did we eat when we didn't eat this. So, for example, there is a bark, an entire plant that you get in Bengal, which is called chui jhal.
Chui jhal.
Yeah, and that was used as a spicing agent. Chui jhal has almost disappeared because you have enough chilies and you have enough black pepper today. Mm-hmm. So black pepper was a very expensive commodity even in India. And it only grew on the coast, the South Malabar coast and Kerala. And it was expensive. Mm-hmm. But we ate something called long pepper, Piper longum. And even that has disappeared. So all over North India and Central India, we grew this thing called Piper longum. It's very hard and it's difficult to grind compared to black pepper. Black pepper is very easy to grind. You can crush it in a mortar and a pestle very easily. Mm-hmm. So when black pepper became more and more available, or round pepper, everybody switched to that and forgot long pepper. Now long pepper, or Lindi Pipli as it's called in Maharashtra, okay, is a far better flavor and a far better heat source. 300 BC, you have the Greeks talking about it, and it's coming from India. Wow. So, Ayurveda still holds on to it. And it's part of a lot of Ayurvedic Chavanprashas and things like that. You can go to an Ayurvedic shop and actually buy it. Mm-hmm. So, again, you win some, you lose some. So, there are so many spices that we've stopped using. There are so many spices that we have introduced. So, Badiyan fool, for example, which we call Chakri fool. That's a very recent spice in India. It's come from the East. Long was not there in India forever. Long is something that came to India about 1500 years ago. Hari Ilaichi is not Indian. Kali Ilaichi, the big Ilaichi, is actually Indian. It comes from the Himalayas. The Hari Ilaichi comes again from Southeast Asia. So much has come through travel. There's a beautiful story of Shah Jahan's court, This is in Delhi. It's the right place to tell it. So Shah Jahan was in his older years feeling weak. So all the doctors in his court, the Ayurvedists, the Unanis, the Siddha practitioners were all called together, and they came up with an elixir for the emperor to drink. And they said, if he drinks this, chusti furti tandarusti aa jayegi.
Back to
yeah. So they made this, and there was a beautiful gold cup and all that was brought because gold is, uncorruptible by any source, and it was presented to him.
More shahi.
And he picked up the goblet, smelt it and threw it away. I said, what do you think I am? Some kind of ayash? Huh? Mm-hmm. Do you think I'm an alcoholic? How dare you give me this? And they were like, but Maharaj, there is no alcohol in this. Mm-hmm. This is liars. All of you all are liars. I could smell the nutmeg. Now, in those days, nutmeg was a horrendously expensive commodity. It didn't grow anywhere in India. It grew in 10 little islands called the Banda Archipelago. Okay? And it traveled to India and was like worth its weight in gold. So, he had smelt this smell on his father's mouth when he was growing up. Jahangir used to drink a lot of wine, and the wine would be spiced. And because he was Jahangir,
Jahangir.
Yeah, so his wine would be very often spiced with grated nutmeg. So to him, to Shah Jahan, the aroma of nutmeg was the aroma of his father's wine. So he was sure that this was a haram item, and he threw it away. And we'll never know whether this incredibly expensive elixir, which in those days cost an arm and a leg, would ever have really worked, because nobody ever drank it.
Yeah, it just from the mouth.
Just the smell
just
of the nutmeg. And the Emperor of India threw it all away.
Yeah. So going back to the recipes and the techniques that we had, are we losing the traditional recipes and techniques? And if we are, how serious is it? So how serious problem is it?
Yes, we are. I don't know how much of a problem it is, in the sense that I feel that we should document all our processes. I'm a history guy, right? An archaeology guy. Mm-hmm. So I really believe that we should document the process. And if it is something that we stop making, we stop making. That is up to people to stop making. Mm-hmm. You cannot dictate on a populace what they should eat and what they should not eat. That is wrong. But saying that, I get a lot of problems with people who use the word authentic. So there is this absolute curse word according to me. It is the worst word in food. So this is my authentic food. What do you mean by authentic? In a woman's life, very often food changes 3 times the way she cooks it. Even if you're coming from the same community, same this, that, and the other, and everything, traditional kitchen, a woman learns how to cook food in her mother's house. She learns with her mother, her grandmother, her aunts, her sisters-in-law. Then she gets married and goes to her mother-in-law's house, where the food, even if she marries into the same community, same economic strata, same city, is not identical. Because the patriarch of the family doesn't like Karela, nobody will eat Karela.
Wow.
If the patriarch of the family doesn't like lasun, there will be no lasun in the food.
And that has a huge influence and impact on your recipe.
On your recipe. So the moment you get married, so I jokingly say, that you do your bachelor's in your mother's house, in her kitchen, you do your master's in your mother-in-law's kitchen. And if someday you are lucky enough to have your own kitchen, then you put your stamp of authority on your food. Because now you can cook more or less the way you want to.
Yeah, that's when you have the PhD.
Yeah, that's when you get the PhD. Exactly. So if in one woman's life food can get tweaked 3 times, what is the authenticity of your food? When you use authentic as a marker, you've got to be very, very, very careful. You've got to think 20 times about what it is that you're saying, before you say this kind of thing.
Are we losing the traditional recipes and techniques? And how big a problem it is?
So, like I said, I don't know. When you, change your traditional techniques and your traditions year after year, when, for example, potatoes become part of your tradition, when tomatoes become part of your tradition, when you can't cook without chilies anywhere in India, then what is your tradition? If you are continuously evolving your food and it continues to evolve, then that is your tradition. Your tradition is what you make of it, Zubair. It's not something that is graven in stone. Tradition is flexible. What is available? When is it available? What are the conditions? What is the terroir? I'll give you a simple example. If you study India, all over India there are different souring agents. I was studying the Konkan and we have a lot of imli that we use. And then you go a little bit down and we use this beautiful thing called kokam. And then you go further down towards Goa and they use something called bilimbi. And I was just saying that in one strip, the agent seems to have changed 3 times. And I was talking to one of my colleagues. And she said, my sister-in-law lives in Navsari, where you don't have access to kokam. So she uses tomato. And we keep yanking her chain about how, Arey, tum to tomato bina pakha nahi sakti ho. But if you don't get this, use that. If you come to North India, very often you will find people using amchur. People will use dried pomegranate.
Different methods, different...
Yeah, so you want a souring agent. What is available to you? तुम्हारे वहाँ क्या मिल रहा है? तुम्हारी economy में क्या है? तुम्हारे terroir में क्या है? And simply based on that, you will have a souring agent. And if I come from, say, Konkan to North India and I don't find my regular souring agent, I am going to use whatever is available locally. I will adapt. And when I adapt, it will change the way my food tastes. And my children will grow up with that as the taste.
And we're shifting from one region to the another and another. So it brings a really serious question up that which regional Indian cuisines do you think are underrepresented?
So I think that first of all, we talk about Indian cuisines, state-wise. So Punjabi cuisine, Kashmiri cuisine, Maharashtrian cuisine. So I come from Maharashtra and I could tell you that there are probably 50 if not more cuisines in Maharashtra itself. So you look at the Sindhis who come as refugees and settle down in Bombay. They have a cuisine. The Parsis are there. They have a cuisine. The Bori Muslims are there. They have a cuisine. The Memons are there. They have a cuisine. To make matters more complicated, there are Menons. They have a cuisine. And, this goes on and on and on. So just in a city like Bombay, where you have so many people coming in, you have so many cuisines. So which cuisine do you nail down? So Bori cuisine, for example, has no dedicated restaurant. The cuisine of the Memons, as they're called, has no dedicated restaurant. So a lot of small Muslim trader populations are completely forgotten. That's part one. So many of the lower castes and the communities that are defined as Dalits, where does their food ever come up, Zubair? Have you ever been to a restaurant called Dalit restaurant?
I haven't come across.
No, it doesn't exist. Because, even a Dalit would think 20 times before naming something Dalit restaurant, कि यार दलित छोड़ के कोई आएगा ही नहीं मेरे वहाँ खाने. So people like you and me might be very interested. Say, "Arey, Dalit restaurant. Let's go and check out what it is."
Absolutely.
But then we are a minority. The majority would say, "Chhi, Dalit ke haathon ka pakaya hua," and things like that even today. So, this is one of the major problems that we face. Adivasi food. The food of the tribals of India. There is the beautiful tribal food festival held every year in Jamshedpur. But apart from one or two things like this, where do we talk about the food of the tribals? There's a beautiful book from Gujarat now by Sangeeta, where she talks about the tribal food of Gujarat. And it's such an eye-opener. Dalit Kitchens of Marathwada, which is the translation of Shahu Patole's book, Anna Hai Apurna Brahma, which is a very hard-hitting title because the common statement is Anna Hai Purna Brahma, that food is complete Brahma. But he's saying Anna Hai Apurna Brahma, incomplete. And he's talking about the food he grew up on as a child, as a Dalit.
So, it clearly say that food is deeply, I would say tied to our identity.
Oh, hugely. Look at the Naga kitchens that have opened up all across the country. Delhi has at least 8 or 10 of them. Why did this happen? Because Nagas from Nagaland came down to Delhi to look for work and they missed the food of their homes. And then somebody said, "Chalo na, I'll start cooking for the Nagas."
True. No, but how does it reflect in caste, as you brought up, class or community in India? Largely.
Have you ever seen a board 100% pure veg?
Many times. I mean, everywhere.
Have you ever seen a 97% pure veg? So what about this pure veg? Either you're vegetarian or you're not vegetarian. So pure veg basically was traditionally a restaurant where all the cooks were Brahmins and all the servers were Brahmins.
Interesting.
So this meant that anybody could eat there without losing caste. So if it was a Brahmin who was cooking, it was everybody who could eat it. If a Kshatriya was cooking, then a Brahmin couldn't eat it. If a Vaishya was cooking, neither a Kshatriya nor a Brahmin could eat it. So caste played a huge role. So various different Brahmin communities set up eateries all over the place. If you go to North India and you say, "Arey yaar, South India ka food kya hai?" They'll tell you idli, dosa, vada, upma, sambar. Tamil Nadu is 97% non-vegetarian as per the government's statistics.
Yeah.
But their food is all vegetarian.
That's surprising.
So it's basically Brahmins who set up messes. Okay? And that is the food that we celebrate as South Indian food in North India. Without realizing that there is so much mutton and so much fish
in the cuisine.
In Tamil Nadu. You come to Karnataka and there are traditional pork restaurants which have a traditional small black pork, a pig, which is what is bred and eaten with great relish. And pork is a huge player in Karnataka. You go down to Kerala, pork, beef, fish, prawn, chicken, mutton, everything.
Everything is there.
Yeah.
So it tells us interestingly, you brought it up subtly initially that food is political.
Yes.
So let's elaborate on food can be political.
So look at what just happened during the elections. To get elected in Bengal, you had so many BJP candidates posing with fish in their hands. Okay? So going away from that vegetarian agenda that has been pushed by the right wing for a long time. And fair enough, that's their agenda. I have no problem with that in the sense that if you have an agenda, that's your agenda. But realizing that, bhai sahab, Bengal mein hum nahi jeet sakte. Because if we tell the Bengali that he can't eat his fish, he's going to tell us to go to hell. And you actually had a candidate saying that this fish was cooked without onions and garlic, therefore it was sattvic. Because he was caught eating fish on camera.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So similarly, look at the gains that the BJP has made in the Northeast. And which has spelt a lot of good things for the Northeast, surprisingly. But the Northeast does not have a beef ban. because the Northeast consumes beef. And if you were to tell the Northeast not to eat beef, the Northeast wouldn't vote for you. You'd lose your elections. So, being selective. There's no beef ban in Goa. Why? There's the BJP in power. Why is there no beef ban?
Because of huge consumption.
Because huge consumption. And the beef actually comes from Karnataka. So that's the funniest part about it. And in Maharashtra, we have a beef ban. 9,000 people lost their jobs overnight in the city of Mumbai because beef was banned. All those people involved in the slaughtering and cutting and chopping
Trimming
and delivering and disposing of the bits and parts and the people looking after the abattoirs, etc. for this. 9,000 people lost their jobs in Bombay with the stroke of a pen.
That's surprising. And this is, we're talking about current situation.
Yeah.
And when we look at the history, what are we learning about political food scenario?
See, the political food scenarios are hilarious. So, for example, the Zoroastrians came as refugees to Gujarat.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, till they came into contact with the British, the Parsis did not eat pork or beef. They ate a lot of seafood on a daily basis because they lived on the coast. And when they had ceremonies and events, they ate wall-to-wall red meat, which was mutton. Okay? The reason that they didn't wasn't, it was a taboo in the Zoroastrian religion. It wasn't a taboo. But they came to India and said the Hindus don't eat beef, the Muslims don't eat pork. If we want to interact with these communities and we want them to come home, then we can't afford to be eating these things. We are too small a community to buck the trend.
Mm-hmm.
Let's quietly go with the flow. So this is politics. The fact that the cow wasn't saved by the beef ban in Maharashtra. Cow slaughter was already banned in Maharashtra, as it is in most of India.
Mm-hmm.
You can only slaughter male animals. Bulls and bullocks, that too with a veterinary certificate saying they're no longer of any farm use. Okay? So this was the protein the poorest of the poor were eating.
Okay.
And you banned that and then you said you'd save the cow. The cow was already safe. So
that's quite a bit surprising fact.
So, this is one of those dichotomies. So this is politics. Why did we stop eating millets? Because we frowned on people who eat millets. We looked down on poor people who ate millets because rich people ate rice. So I remember when I was working at a village called Chandor in Maharashtra, I was speaking to people because this was a place which was very popular for its ragi, which we call nachni in Maharashtra. And I said, why have you almost all stopped growing it? So he said, because our children don't want to eat it. I was like, why don't they want to eat it? So I did a canvassing among some of the teenagers there. And they said, because when we were growing up, we were made fun of and told, you are low caste, you are dark, your shit is also dark. So when you eat a lot of ragi, you have dark feces. So it was pointed out to them that was because they were low caste that they had feces like this. So they stopped eating ragi.
That's the biggest turning point.
That's a huge factor. And it's so insidious, it's so quiet. So caste plays an enormous role and it's a very, very political role. Eat as I eat.
Fair enough.
Why?
Fair enough.
तुम्हें खाना है तुम खाओ, तुम्हें नहीं खाना है तुम मत खाओ. Why will you tell me what to eat and what not to eat?
Why do you interfere in my plate?
Yeah. And especially if you don't eat it, what gives you the right to tell me not to eat it?
If something something you don't find really interesting or delicious to eat, so it could be delicious for others.
Yeah.
So it brings me to the question that how do food habits evolve with urbanization and globalization?
So urbanization does two things. It polarizes food. So some people become very, very hardcore about what they eat and what they don't eat, especially newcomers to the urban landscape. Whereas the longer you are in an urban landscape, the more and more your food taboos begin to drift. Because you have friends who belong to different communities, different religions, and they eat different foods. And you grow up watching them eat their food. And you can't demonize them and their food because you've grown up with them. So also you've probably been nipping into each other's dabbas. My nephew loves sausages. Okay. So his mother would very often pack a couple of sausages for lunch for him. Then he said, Mummy, can I have 4 sausages? So his mother was like, okay, you can have 4 sausages. One day he said, "Mummy, can I have 6 sausages?" His mother was like, "What, you want to take only sausages for lunch? Kya ho raha hai?" So he said, "No, please give no." Then a couple of weeks later, she was making sausages. He said, "Can I have the whole packet?"
Wow.
So she said, "Come on now. What do you think? Some kind of money-making factory that will churn out sausages at this rate for you?" So he said, "No, I don't get to eat any. All my friends are eating my sausages." So she was like, "Which friends of yours are eating your sausages?" When he made a list, she was shocked because 2 of the boys were giant boys and they were wolfing down pork sausages. She was like, "Do their parents know?" So I told them not to eat, but they said that what my mummy doesn't know is okay.
How innocent.
Yeah, and that's because you're growing up together. If everybody likes those bloody pork sausages, you're also going to be saying, "Salo, isme kya hai? Mujhe bhi ek baar kha ke dekhne do." So I'm not saying that we should feed giants pork sausages or something like that. Okay, to each their own. So I have a lot of Muslim friends who won't eat pork. I have a very good friend of mine who's a Hindu girl married to a Muslim boy. She won't eat pork, she won't drink alcohol because she thinks that's the least she can do. And their family follows these taboos. On the other hand, one of my closest buddies is a Muslim who can't live without bacon.
Wow.
So when he told his mother that he wanted to eat bacon and ham and sausages, instead of, getting, and I'm talking about a good 40 years ago, his mother said, "Okay, I'm going to buy you a frying pan, a spatula, a plate, a scrubber and a soap. These are yours. They'll be put on top of the cupboard. You cook, you eat, you
clean.
wash, you put it away.
I'm not responsible for
I'm not responsible for this." Okay? Because if this is what you want to do, fine. So, you will have houses like this and you'll have houses that will say, "Over my dead body."
Over my dead body, yes.
So, that's different strokes for different folks. I mean, different people will look at things differently.
True.
But in an urban milieu, you will see all of these changes taking place. I had a very good Muslim friend of mine for many years. His father used to drink alcohol once in a while. Had a bar in the house. And would tell his children things like, "Haath pair tod dunga if you drink alcohol." So this kid always wanted to drink alcohol. When his family moved out of the country, he'd come back for his exams to Bombay.
Mm-hmm.
And every night he'd get rip-roaring drunk.
Sloshed.
I would carry him home. Okay? And just because it was a taboo. Now, I grew up with a large bar in my house which was never locked. And if I wanted to have a drink, I could have had a drink. There was no excitement.
Exploring household.
"Oh my God, alcohol, it's forbidden. I will eat the forbidden fruit."
It was not introduced as a big thing to you.
It was not a forbidden fruit. So therefore, it was just, okay, weird tasting stuff. Dad likes to drink it, let him drink it. So, that kind of thing. So sometimes when we kind of pressurize our children, we don't realize what is happening in an urban setting.
Absolutely.
You can control a rural setting. You cannot control an urban setting.
Absolutely. So what excites you about current Indian food scene? What is there which really excites you?
So what really excites me about the current Indian food scene is that finally the Indian is exploring food. And I mean the Indian in a very generic way. Mm-hmm. For a long time, it was Delhiites, Mumbaikas who were exploring food and everybody else was very happily eating what they ate traditionally. But now you have Naga kitchens and you have Manipuri kitchens, you have Assamese food, you have Kashmiri food, you have Pahadi food. And the development of all of this has been hugely pushed by the home chef. Mm-hmm. So the home chef making their food available for others to eat has really radically changed things. Many home chefs have set up their own restaurants, ultimately. Many of them have crashed and burnt because cooking food and running a restaurant are two different things. But at the same time, more and more people are being exposed to more and more food. There used to be one Naga kitchen in Bombay. Now there are half a dozen at least. Mm-hmm. So again, most of their clientele when I go there are not Nagas. There are a few kids from the Northeast eating there. Mm-hmm. But there are mostly people not from the Northeast eating there. So for years, I couldn't get a decent pork momo in Bombay. Now I get some delicious ones. I'd have to come down all the way to Delhi and go to Delhi Hat to eat a good pork momo if I wasn't going to Calcutta. Today, I've got one in Kalina. And probably more now. So much of the world is shrinking And so much of the world is coming out to the metros and even the tier 2 cities. So a lot of food is now becoming available. A lot of people are traveling for food. See, all this time, food was incidental to travel. Because you traveled, you ate.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I came to North India seriously and I went to Dalhousie. And I got off from the bus stop and the two things that hit me were dosas being advertised and Gujarati thali.
Wow.
And I was, what about the Punjabi food of Dalhousie? What about the Himachali food of Dalhousie? Where is that? And I couldn't find it. I found Punjabi food, but I couldn't find Himachali food in Dalhousie.
The authentic Himachali food.
And I remember going to McLeodganj, and my greatest meal was at a place called the Chocolate Log, run by a lovely expat British lady who used to love to bake, and she'd started her own thing. And I was like, but what about the food of the Tibetans? Where do I go and eat that?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no place that you can go to.
But surprisingly, I could drink apple beer 35 years ago in McLeodganj, because there was a brewery in Bhutan whose apple cider was being made available in McLeodganj because people liked it over there. So, sometimes there were weird things happening like this. But I like to travel for food. To me, even if I'm going to an archaeological site, my hindbrain is like, kya kha ke aayenge?
Absolutely.
What is going to be there? And I've eaten food, I'm telling you, Zubair, there is food that is so out of left field in India. I was working in Rajasthan, and there's a beautiful Jat community in Rajasthan. And like you have your thread ceremony for Hindus. The Jats have something called an Anguthi ceremony. So when the boy comes of age, a copper ring is placed on his finger, and it's quite celebrated as him now entering his manhood. It's normally about 10, 11 years, I think, of age when this is done. So we were invited for a meal, and we sat down in a pangat like everybody, and there was a thali, and everybody got a chapati slapped onto their thali. Now normally you have a chapati folded onto the side or whatever, and you had a lot of Maharashtrians, so they were folding the chapati and putting it on the side. I looked down the line, so the local people leaving the chapati in the middle of the thali.
Wow.
So I said, I am also going to leave it there. Then it got very interesting. A guy came along with a huge vessel of rice, hot sticky rice, and put one huge chamuch of rice right on the roti.
Wow.
I was like,
that's
bada ajeeb hai, roti and rice. I mean, so I kept looking down the line to see what it is. People were making a little well in it.
Wow.
Okay, spreading it around a little, making a little depression.
Gives you a hint something more is coming.
Okay, something interesting is happening. The next guy comes with a beautiful brass tagari full of sugar and takes one handful of sugar and puts it in the middle of the hot rice. I'm like, curiouser and curious. What
is happening here?
Then comes a brass bucket, and everybody gets about 100-150 ml of boiling hot ghee on that sugar. So the sugar immediately melts and infuses into the rice. Okay? And whatever leaks out gets sucked up by the roti.
Oh, interesting.
There's a completely dry roti at the base. And with it, you get this dal, which is like fire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no other word that I can think of but fire. And this lovely bowl of thick milk with like 2-3 grains of rice, which they call kheer. Slightly sweetened. Okay? So that's to cut the heat of that dal. And you eat the dal with the sweet rice, the ghee rice. And when you finish, you roll up your chapati, which is full of the sugar and ghee, and you use it as a palate cleanser. And then you finish your kheer. I was like, wow.
That is such a combination.
Where would I have found this? I mean, I cannot think of a single place till today where I would get this as a meal. Mm-hmm. You know, dal bati churma to tumhe mil jayega. But ye kahan milega tumhe?
Absolutely.
So there are so many traditions like this. I wonder how many of them exist in India that I will never know about.
So it comes back to documentation is really important.
Documentation is king.
And referring to what you saw in McLeodganj and Dalhousie, so are chefs really respecting tradition or reinventing too much?
Yes and no on both sides. So I'll tell you something. I went to Shillong just last month, and it was part of the CT movement, and we were guests of the Meghalaya state. Mm-hmm. And we ate food. I mean, that curated food that we ate, I don't believe we could have eaten anywhere. So we had Khasi food, we had Garo food, etc., etc. Very specialized, made by chefs who cook for their tribal events, and who are modern trained chefs. But they were feeding us mostly food as it was. So the lady who did, a very sweet girl, who was part of MasterChef also, forget her name offhand just now, who gave us this beautiful meal. And I still remember, she said, I'm cooking exactly how what is cooked for a feast in my village. There is no dessert, so there will be no dessert. We don't do dessert. There will be no dessert. And I also had another boy, young chef, who looked at pairing food. So this was the traditional way it was done. This was his take on it. This was the traditional way it was done. This was his take on it. And everything was served back to back, course-wise. And it was fascinating to see this. And I was seeing young chefs in Meghalaya coming back to Meghalaya, coming back to Shillong. And I was very intrigued. So, being a academic, I was asking them, and they said, finally, there is a space in Meghalaya for us to come back. There is a conducive space for us to come back. So there's this lovely chef called Chef Niyati Rao, who runs an Italian restaurant in Shillong. And it's as Italian can get. And it's brilliant. Okay, called Nonna May. She does one of the most fabulous tiramisus that you will have in most of India.
Interesting.
And she's the one who ran Eka in Bombay, runs it still, and has multiple restaurants. And she's opened a restaurant in Shillong, an Italian restaurant in Shillong. Now, if you're a chef who's looking ultimately at the bottom line, Shillong is obviously a destination now which is worth investing in.
True.
So this is what I'm looking at now, that people are going back, kids who've come out of the Northeast desperately to work and find a well-paying job in India are now going back to the Northeast and celebrating the Northeast. And now they have the technique and the skill set that they've got in Delhi or Bombay or wherever else.
And they're opening doors for others as well.
Yes. And now there are entire academies. So there's an academy in Shillong which only trains kids to go out into the culinary space. Not as chefs, but as bartenders, as front office, as service. You can actually do diplomas in this and then go out.
True.
So this is empowerment. And this is the way things are changing. And sadly, in peninsular India, I'm not seeing a lot of that. I just think how many cuisines must exist in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh that I have never eaten. How many small communities and tribal groups whose food I will never know. And it makes me feel sad.
I mean, that is quite a bit interesting conversation to look at when it comes to the development in the food. So what trends do you think are overrated? Really, really overrated.
So I honestly think the swoosh and the microgreen needs to die. The hanging of cycles from the roof also needs to go away. And we need to stop overthinking our food. I will have something new. So I will have something new, think of what works. Don't just cook something that is rubbish. Don't cook some trash. I remember going to a pizzeria which had chorizo and bacon on a pizza. And the center of my pizza was raw and the edges of my pizza were burnt. And the light was so dim that I had to read the menu with my phone. So, I'm sorry, boss. You failed. I'm never going back.
Absolutely.
You failed on so many counts that it's not working. When I heard people tell me, no, the pizza is very good. I'm like, they imported their bricks from Italy.
Still doing a lot of burning job.
Bricks from Italy? I mean, what?
You're serving food.
Yeah. So I know this chef who runs a chain of restaurants, and he has a restaurant which does Punjabi food. Some of the nicest Punjabi food in Bombay, very vegetarian, very Punjabi. In the beginning, he used to get his water from Amritsar. So he would come with a truck of 20-liter battlas of water from Amritsar. And he would say, no, the water makes a difference to the kulcha. 6 months into the business, he realized that when water runs out for some reason or the other and we use local water, nobody complains, number one, and it costs nothing. Whereas I'm spending an arm and a leg in getting water from Amritsar. So let's turn the tap off on Amritsar and turn the tap on in Bombay.
True.
So, these are things that you realize when you set up a shop and you realize what you can do and what you can't do. So, good presentation, a little bit of tweaking, all that is fine. But you can't take the life out of a dish and say, no, this is my interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't do a duck moily, which is, one small piece of duck with one smear of moily sauce and say, this is my interpretation. I'm sorry, boss. is not working. Duck moili should be in a nice gravy and, all of that. So, little things like this. There are some people who hit it out of the park when they innovate. There are some people who shoot themselves in the leg. There are dishes that get created in a hurry to do placement on a menu and can never leave the menu after that. My favorite story is the eggs Kejriwal from the Bombay canteen in Bombay. They needed more starters. So Masti mein, because they were cutting their brioche buns into half and not using the tops, they said, let's toast the top, put a chutney sauce, a fried egg, cheese and gratinate it and call it the eggs Kejriwal and send it out. Now, they didn't know there was a dish called eggs Kejriwal, is what I have been told. They were naming this after Mr. Kejriwal from Delhi. There was a dish called eggs Kejriwal. So they took the eggs Kejriwal dish concept and they named it after Kejriwal. Hell of a coincidence or whatever. I'm very confused about exactly what went down. But the fact remains that they've never been able to take it off their menu. It was supposed to be a stopgap till they develop more dishes on the menu.
Yeah.
They've never been able to take it off. It's a hit.
It became staple.
Yeah. It's like their coffee rasgulla.
Okay.
Which was again, what can we innovate? And they did. And it's been such a hit because it works. Dipping a rasgulla into espresso. It just works. So sometimes, your hits come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And sometimes the most hard work that you do on a dish fails.
It really opens the door for this question that how do you balance authenticity with innovation?
So like I said, authenticity to me is a bad word. But that said, within parameters that you set for authenticity and certain flexibility, you realize that the soul of the dish must remain the same. When you turn a burger into a bread dust and a thin smear of meat and 4 dots of sauces and give it to me, the point of a burger is gone. No, so this is a deconstructed burger. It may be, my friend, but to me a burger is something I grab with 2 hands and eat. It's not this. So for me, it has failed. For other people, it might not have. I still remember I went to this beautiful Italian dinner once, many, many years ago, and this Italian chef had made what he called a dal chawal arancini.
Dal chawal?
Arancini. So the fried bread, rice balls. Mm-hmm. And he used basically frozen little globules of dal, surrounded them by rice, battered and fried them. And he called it a dal chawal arancini. And to me, it just didn't work. Everybody was like, wow, look at how he's bringing India into Italian food. And I was like, okay, if it works for you guys,
it works for you.
Fine. But for me, it didn't work. So again, food lies in the mouth and eyes of the eater. If something works and becomes a runaway success, there's nothing like it. In India, nobody traditionally eats octopus. Not a single community on the coast eats octopus. Mm-hmm. So octopus would be a bycatch, would be thrown away or would be sold in bulk to people who made cat food and dog food. Twice or thrice chefs tried to do octopus that I know of in Bombay. Didn't catch on. Then we have a chef who comes from Europe, who's worked all over the place, and he takes octopus and he double cooks it. So he steams the octopus and then he grills it in a chorizo fat in a Goan-inspired restaurant. And that octopus just goes wild. Suddenly, the guy who's bringing octopus to him realizes that this throwaway product now has value. And people in the market start realizing that this product has value.
And it changed the whole game.
So it changed the whole game. So I was talking to a coastal chef from a coastal community who does home food, home dining from the Koli community. And I asked her whether she eats octopus. And she said, yeah, when we found that so many of these top restaurants were suddenly interested in it and we could get money for it, we wanted to know what it was like. So I said, how do you cook it? So she said, I chop it up really tiny and cook it with meat masala and we eat it like a keema. I was like, wow. What? But yeah, and she says, it's a fun thing to eat. We like eating it at home. So, this is the way an entire perception was changed because somebody made a bycatch work.
You never know what is going to work.
You never know what's coming next.
Yeah. And opens a really interesting thought of why is food education important, and according to you, should it be the part of school curricula or not?
Okay, so that is a very serious question. Look, there are three things that you cannot live without. Okay, the first is breathing. It's completely involuntary. You can technically hold your breath till you pass out. But the moment you pass out, your hindbrain takes over and you start breathing.
Yeah.
So you can't do without breathing, but there's nothing that you can do to stop breathing unless you suffocate somebody to death. The second thing is sleep. You can fight sleep for 72 hours or whatever. But when the crash comes, it's one hell of a crash and your body shuts down because your body needs that downtime.
Collapsing.
Okay? The third thing that you have to do to live is to ingest. I won't say eat, I'll say ingest. Because, people get upset and say, just because you're married to a Bengali, you think food and water and everything is carbo. I said, no, it's not like that, but argument's sake, ingest. Okay? You cannot live without eating. A real maximum limit is 10 days without food and water. And that's one rare case of a woman trapped in her bed, a 90-year-old woman trapped in her bed after an earthquake in Iran in the city of Bam. And she was suffering from mild dementia, so she didn't realize she was not eating or drinking. But 8 to 9 days is the max that you cannot go without food before your internals start giving you trouble. And water. 8 days without water and you are as good as dead. So why do we not teach this in school? Why do we not teach what is required for our bodies, where our food comes from, what our farmers go through? So we do teach basic nutrition these days, but it's very basic. And we have so many mistakes. People think that dal is a protein. Dal is a complex carbohydrate. Stop thinking it's a protein. I eat a lot of dal doesn't mean you get a lot of protein.
Protein out of it.
It has more protein than chawal, yes. But then anything has more protein than chawal. The only thing that has less protein is makka. And when people who eat corn get very excited about eating a very interesting diet, I tell them that's less than 4% protein. That's probably the lowest protein that you can get out of any food that you eat.
Yeah.
So again, why we eat, what we eat, where we eat. So if you go to the Punjab and you have a lot of gehu and you have a lot of dahi and you have a lot of dal and things like that, why is it? It's because of the terroir, it's because of what grew there, it's because of the climate over there, all of that. So take these things into consideration. So one of the most interesting dals to come out of your Kumaon and Garhwal region is something called moat.
Moat.
And moat is disappearing now from the tables of Kumaon and Garhwal. Because so many other dals are available. And see, human beings want new. We suffer from a serious disease which we call neophilia. Yeah. We want new.
New.
In our clothes, in our cars, in our houses,
on
in our furniture, on our tables. Everywhere we want to try new things. So, neophilia is biggest in food. Just think of it, Zubair. Most of us who live in cities don't eat the same breakfast every day today. I grew up with 2 eggs, 2 slices of bread, butter and jam. 6 days a week, that was my breakfast and there was no option. Jo tha, ye tha. There would be one dal or gravy with rice for lunch and that was it. If there was a side dish, hallelujah. Dinner was one bowl of either a kadhanya or a sabji. If there was a side dish, wow. And roti or bread.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. And this is what food was. The multiple options, the ordering in, the Swiggy, Zomato, all of that didn't exist. So today we have such a brilliant choice of things. But in that choice, sometimes we forget what our roots were, where we came from.
So that has to be the part of the...
Yeah, and we forget what our nutrition is. While I would love to eat burgers every day, it might not be the best thing for me. So education. Education is what it's all about. If we educate our public, our people, our children about food, we will respect our food. And if you eat each other's food, I'll tell you this, you won't kill each other. When you sit on each other's tables and you break bread with each other,
and eat from the same loaf.
You don't kill each other.
Discussing about people considering dal rich in protein, what are people getting wrong about nutrition food today?
So people aren't getting enough protein in their food. More and more our vegetarian food in India is almost pure carbohydrate. We're not getting enough fat, we're not getting enough protein. And this is not just a rural phenomena. It's also an urban phenomena where you have misrepresentations of diet taking place and people just, blacklisting all kinds of products because of preconceived rubbish notions. Ghee is bad, eggs are bad, milk is bad, milk is the blood of cows, and all of that kind of stuff. So we're not realizing that milk is a very important substitute for sources of vitamin B9, B6, B12 for vegetarians. Vitamin D, for example, for vegetarians. And if vegetarians were to stop having milk and milk products, their lives would require supplements.
Interesting.
Now, if you're good with supplements, that's a good enough thing. Vitamin D, for example, is almost impossible to find in the daily required limit in the vegetable world. If you have a glass of full cream milk, you'll get your daily vitamin D requirement. If you eat 30 grams of fish, you'll get your daily requirement. If you eat meat, you'll get your daily requirement. If you eat eggs, you'll get it. But purely on a vegetarian diet, as in a non-lacto-vegetarian diet, it's almost impossible to get your daily requirement of vitamin D.
True.
Now, there is an alternative today, which is basically the inside of the kernel of the mango. So once the mango kernels are dried and you break them open, the inside of the kernel, a spoonful will give you your vitamin D every day if you can eat a spoonful of that. And if you have access to that. But that's very, very new and they're still looking at possible side effects of a spoonful of that. But similarly, vitamin B9, you need ghee for vitamin B9. Ghee is one of the greatest sources. Ghee is one of the easiest digestible fats. No vegetable oil or vanaspati can be digested as easily as butter or ghee. And we still have all kinds of taboos that we've created in our minds about them. Eggs are one of the greatest sources of nutrition in the world. But we have problems with eggs. Unfertilized eggs are more vegetarian than milk. But we have problems with that. So, yes, there is a lot of nonsense going on. I mean, look, I've got no problem if you know what you're eating and you eat it. If you know that you're having a diet which is not high in the nutrients your body requires and you're comfortable with it, that's fine.
Good for you.
As a grown person, to each their own. But when you deprive children of a balanced diet in the name of purity and spirituality and things like that, I find that very difficult to swallow.
So, I mean, it makes a huge difference on upbringing as well. It sets your, I would say a palate for, taste palate. So how there is a n number of books, n number of, I would say sectors of knowledge. How do we reconnect our younger generation to the traditional food knowledge?
So all traditional food knowledge is not necessarily perfect. There are gaps in our food knowledge. This whole thing about don't eat milk and fish together and don't eat this together with that. A lot of it is nani ma ke nuske are rubbish.
Those are myths, basically.
Completely. At the same time, I have seen these myths work beautifully on people who believe them. You can convince yourself that because you did something which was not right, which was proscribed, you are now going to suffer, and you suffer. It's amazing seeing this kind of placebo effect kind of thing, happening in people, but it does happen. I think we need far more education than we have in food, in nutrition, in lifestyle, and we need to just stop dissing each other's food. If you don't want to eat what I want to eat, why would you run down what I eat? And vice versa. So, this superiority of my food versus your food needs to stop. You need to really look at the food and what it's giving you. Okay? And it's it and that's that.
I mean, not necessarily that, okay, this is good for me, should be good for others as well. And what is good for others could be good for me as well. So, talking about good food, bad food, like less nutrient, more nutrient. So, what according to you is good food?
So, let me put it to you, what is bad food? So, if I was going to eat fatty pork 3 times a day, deep fried, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
However much I might like it. Okay? That's not what my body needs. My body needs a balanced diet It needs its carbohydrate, it needs its proteins, it needs a certain amount of fat. It also needs leafy green vegetables, it needs fruits, nuts. A perfectly balanced diet is not the same for everybody. It depends on what is available to you. If you have meat available to you easily, then your protein needs can be met through that. If it's not available, then you need to look at some other option.
Alternatives to the proteins.
Yeah, so there are alternatives and they're always there. A purely vegetarian diet, which meets all your micros and macros, is a very, very expensive diet. It's not a poor man's diet. Contrary to what you'd like to believe that the poor are vegetarians, it's not like that. More than 71% of Indians are non-vegetarians, which doesn't mean they all go out and butcher a cow in the morning or a chicken in the morning or whatever. So they are not people who eat meat on a daily basis.
But
all
they are
71%
non-vegetarian.
of them. They eat meat on weekends and things like that, maybe once a week.
In a day, once in a month.
Yeah, whatever. So there are different levels of meat consumption. So, these surveys very often give you very blanket features which are misrepresentative. All Indians eat a lot of vegetables, almost by default. And we like our vegetables. It's not like we don't like our vegetables. But what are the vegetables we like? Gajar, aloo, tomato,
cucumber.
So, again, not necessarily the leafy greens. The leafy greens have been given a bad name. Tinda banaya aapne, tinda.
And the expression.
That expression of tinda.
Or karela.
Tinda cooked right is the beautiful thing for most people. If it's not working for you, it's not working for you. Now for me, karela just doesn't work because I didn't grow up eating karela. I can't stand karela. I've had a million people say, you haven't eaten it the way I make it, or my mom makes it, or my wife makes it. And I have been shoved karela down my throat.
Can't go for it.
I now tell people, I'm so sorry, but I'm allergic to karela.
Just how you stand out of it.
So then I stay out of it, and then they don't feel bad and I don't feel bad and all of that, because boss, stop forcing me to eat it. Surprisingly, over time I found one dish in which I actually like karela. So my wife makes a dish called shukto, which is a Bengali stew of sorts. I mean, forgive me for calling it that. And one of the multiple ingredients in that is a small quantity of karela. So it gives you all of those, important tastes. And that bitter, when it comes in small doses, actually works. It's like bitters in your drink. If you were to shake that bottle of bitters in your mouth, you'd probably throw up. But a couple of drops of bitters in your drink.
Subtly, slowly.
So I've realized that I can eat karela. It's not like I can't.
So discussing about how your wife introduced you to karela with a different dish, initially not being fond of karela, what is your approach to cooking? Is it more scientific, more emotional, or more, I would say, historical?
Neither. When I cook comfort food. I cook food that makes me happy. Okay, I make mashed potatoes and pork chops. I make omelets and akuris and fried eggs. And I make grilled sandwiches. These are things that make me happy. I also like to make plain khichdi, which irritates the hell out of my wife because she says, you got to put things in khichdi. And I'm like, I just want dal, chawal, haldi, namak. That's all I want in my khichdi.
Sometimes it becomes your, that comfort food.
Yeah. So I can eat that incredibly plain khichdi every day for lunch. I know lots of people who would completely go berserk about it. So, I love experimenting with food. I love trying out new things. I came down to Delhi and I'd heard so much about Omo. Omo. So I went over to Omo and a lovely chef over there, Chetna, shameless plug. And so she fed us this, that and the other. I basically saw those loaves of bread there. And I said, I want to eat some bread. So she said, we have a dish which is basically toasted sourdough with butters. So we have a Naga butter, we have a curry podi butter, we have a herb butter. So I said, definitely want to try that first. I could have just eaten that for dinner, that kind of thing. It was really yum. And she was honest enough to tell me, no, our bread game has always been strong even before I took over. So these are the breads we've always been making. And it takes a certain amount of confidence in yourself to say something like this.
True.
And then she said, we're making this new pizza, you've got to try it. So, everybody does a regular pizza with a tomato base. Interestingly, quite a few people now do a pizza bianca. But nobody does a pizza with a pate base. I don't know anybody in Delhi who does one. I don't know anybody in Bombay who does one. So she does a beautiful mushroom base inside her dough, and on top of that they have these beautifully sous vide mushrooms which she slices and places in a fan, and it's called Forest 4 pizza. It comes with a lot of greens in the center and a little bit of goat's cheese. I would come to Delhi just to eat that.
Wow. And it just, this imagination makes you look eating some
so the
delicious
name,
food.
the way it's put together, the beautifully
The dressing of it.
Yeah, those beautifully steamed mushrooms which give me the texture of almost eating a pork belly. But with the definitive taste of mushrooms. It's not like it's mimicking the taste of pork belly. These are mushrooms. It's a vegetarian pizza. And it's gorgeous. So, it's so difficult to pin food down. And the more you eat, the more you taste, there will be things you don't like. It's okay. I don't like akhuni, for example. I like certain funky foods. Akhuni is one of them which I find too OTT for me.
Okay.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't
but
work,
that doesn't
it doesn't
mean it's
work.
bad.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't work for others. So we've been trying to figure out where emotions are connected to the food. So what does food mean to you beyond just eating?
So food is nutrition. Food is life. Food is a mother's love or a wife's love for you. Food is your love for your children. Food is nourishment. Food is something that binds the family together. I truly believe that the family that eats together lives together and loves together. Food is something to make friends over. Food is the stuff that has kept our civilization going. It is responsible for our civilization the way it is. The growing of food, the creation of surplus is what has created our civilization. And we are what we are because of our food.
Identical, or we would say cultural representation comes along with the food.
Completely. So, when you say Goshtaba, you automatically know that you're talking about a Kashmiri.
Yeah.
Right? When you say Meen Polichettu, you know you're talking about somebody from Kerala.
Absolutely.
It's like that. When you say Malwani curry rice, you know somebody from the south coast of Maharashtra.
Yeah.
So, your food identifies you. They become identifying markers. Everybody eats dal, but a Maharashtrian will eat varan bhat.
Varan bhat.
Okay, he'll eat an amti. So, dals have names. A Parsi will say Mori dar versus Dhansakni dar versus Masalani dar. So it's all dal at the end of the day, right? No, it's not all dal.
Absolutely.
Each of these names evokes certain memories, certain emotions, certain tastes.
And it has a connection.
Yeah, and it has a connection to you, your family, your past, your friends, your growing up, all of these things. And the older you get, the more these connections become obvious to you. Things that you took for granted when you were a child. And you're like, I want to eat this.
Yeah.
And now you actually long for those dishes, and sometimes nobody's left to make those dishes for you.
Yeah, even the fragrance or the aroma of a dish takes you back to, sometimes it's like, this reminds me of that. This takes me back to that time. So I think I completely agree with you on that statement.
Food is the greatest mnemonic. Finish. This is single inverted commas. Food is the greatest mnemonic. Nothing has the recall value like food. Nothing. It's good recall, bad recall, painful recall, all kinds of recall. But food has recall value like nothing else does. And when you eat, you first eat with your ears. You hear the food being cooked. You eat with your nose. You smell the food being cooked.
Yeah.
When you go there, you eat with your eyes. You see the food first. And no, it doesn't even get to your mouth even after that. You feel your food. Even with a fork and knife or a spoon or with your hands, touch comes into play. And then finally, after all that, you stick it in your mouth and your taste buds work on your food.
Yeah.
So food is an incredibly complex emotion.
So we have been having a long list of these open-ended questions. Now we come to the rapid fire and see what is there. So I'm really excited about this part. So one Indian dish everyone must try at least once.
Doesn't exist.
Interesting. A dish you think is overrated?
One dish that I think is overrated. Oh my God, there is an endless list of dishes that I think are overrated. Uh, okay, this is going to get me into trouble, but butter chicken.
Butter chicken. If you could eat in any historical era, where would you go?
Ooh. As much as I will probably live to regret going there, to the Harappans, to Harappan city to eat what they eat over there.
One ingredient you can't live without.
Butter and bread.
If ancient Indians had Zomato, what would be trending?
If ancient Indians had Zomato, what would be trending? Kheer for dessert, khichdi for lunch, and probably, depending on where you were, all kinds of meat, fish, not chicken. So today chicken is the mainstay, it wouldn't have been chicken.
Okay. Sweet or spicy?
Sweet.
Street food or fine dining?
Street food.
One ingredient you deleted forever?
Deleted with Karela.
I think my wife must.
She doesn't mind.
Okay.
There are alternatives to Karela for that. There's something called Jukti fool.
Okay.
Okay. Neem leaves. All alternatives. So Bengali mothers are very clever.
They have taught them the best.
Yeah.
One dish you could eat daily without getting bored?
Plain dal rice with ghee.
That's a comfort food. Usually people consider. What is your comfort food after a long day?
Scrambled eggs and toast.
Interesting. Do you ever just eat something totally fast food like instant noodles or not?
Yes, I do. My wife makes the most amazing instant noodles, but she always pimps them up. So instant noodles in my house have slices of cheese in them. They have Goan sausage in them. All kinds of things. So yeah, we eat a lot of instant noodles. It's great fun, but they're not just the instant noodles.
Okay. Has studying food history ever ruined a dish for you?
Ruined a dish for me, no. But made me realize the sadness associated with that dish, yes. So over time, my friend Vernika, introduced me to this beautiful Punjabi dish called bread halwa. And I decided to do research into this dish, bread halwa. And I realized that bread halwa is something that the Punjabi refugees made in their refugee camps. Oh. They were given a daily measure of sugar, ghee, and they were given bread. Sometimes they were given butter. So they would take this bread, which they didn't know what to do with because bread was not their thing. And they would crumble a stale bread, add the ghee, add a little water, add some sugar, and slowly make a bread halwa out of it. It's a beautiful dish. It's a delicious dish, but it's such a bittersweet memory. Mm-hmm. It's a memory of a time when you made do with what you had and you brought a little cheer to the family in their darkest hours.
So that was the last question of the rapid fire. Now we move to another long-ended answer questions. What is the one thing you wish more people understand about Indian food?
That Indian food is not a monolith. That Indian food is so many different things to so many different people. Mm-hmm. That is the most important thing.
Okay. If you could preserve just one culinary tradition forever, what would it be?
If I could one culinary tradition forever, what would it be? It would most definitely be tribal cuisine. Tribal cuisine, because I think there is so much it has to offer and so much that is being lost.
Can we have a bit more information about it?
So the way tribals cook with what they have. So there's very little oil, if any, because oil is something they do not generate. So whatever fat they use is animal fat. They use a lot of techniques that are incredibly healthy. Food wrapped in leaves and cooked over coals. Food spitted and cooked. Okay? Food cooked in one bowl at a time, where you have one handi in which you put everything and you cook it, because that's that. So, tribals would even extend to what we call the Khana Badosh people, the nomadic peoples, the nomadic tribes. And I still remember Dr. Shinde talking to a Bhadwal, and I was translating for him. These are shepherds. And he wanted to go on their annual trek in the monsoons when they move with the animals. Mm-hmm. And the Bhadwal gentleman very very sweetly told me to translate for Shinde sir. He said, tell him that when it rains, the dal doesn't end.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because it's raining in the dal, we are all eating out of the same bowl.
Interesting. That really touched the heart.
Yeah. So, how to forage while you're on the move with your animals to add a little flavor to your food. Because you can only carry so much. How to use salt sparingly because you only got that much.
Absolutely.
Things like that.
Very calculative measure.
Yeah, so tribal food is all about that. And it's also, okay, I've brought down a deer. We are going to eat like it's going out of fashion. Because there's no refrigeration and you got this much meat, we're going to kill it.
Absolutely.
At the same time, the way in which food hierarchies exist in tribal populations are very different from where they exist in a city. A successful hunter traditionally doesn't eat the best cuts of meat from his hunt, but eats the leftovers. He distributes the best cuts to the underprivileged, the injured, the widows, the children. This gains him enormous credit, enormous honor. And it's incredibly calculated because you know that you're not going to make a good kill every day.
Absolutely.
So if you give away the best bits when you make a good kill, you're going to get the best bits more often when other people make a kill.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of this Kashmiri metaphor that ras meaneth natak nazarith, where curry is measured and pieces of mutton are counted.
Yes.
So it gives you the balance of the idea that how much has to be served, how much has to be saved. So the last question of the podcast I would subtly ask would be, what legacy do you hope to leave in the world of food?
So people have been very kind to me. They've been very nice to me. I have had some amazing students who have studied under me, and I think of them all as my kids, my students, whatever their age might be or whatever. I've made some fabulous friends. If there's one thing that I hope to leave behind, it's a world that understands food better than when I started doing what I did. That's all I want to leave behind.
I think that's a huge contribution that you have made, not just learned from the kitchen that your mother started as more of a laboratory of experiments, but moving it to the other generations, conveying it, transcribing it for them. Maybe the way you understand the food wasn't the capacity for them to understand the food. And thank you so much for answering all the questions so patiently and giving the best to the audience that will be watching this podcast.
Absolute pleasure, Zubair, to be here. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
How do you suggest viewers of Beenest to sticking to the podcast and listening to you? One message for our viewers.
Eat and let eat. Commensality is the answer. If you eat and share food together, you will stop hating each other and you will understand each other far better.
Thank you for watching that podcast. I hope it answered a lot of questions you had, uncovered a lot of myths. Please hit the subscribe button. We will be bringing more exciting stories and personalities to you. Till then, stay connected.